October 1958, Flagstaff, Arizona. A diner on Route 66, 2 blocks west of the Santa Fe Depot,
Coffee
a
refill
plain
for
building
ya.
with a counter and 8 booths, and a hand-painted sign above the door that says, Cobb's Diner,
Obliged.
established 1948. It is 2 in the afternoon. A man in a tan Stetson and a canvas jacket is sitting at the counter with a plate of food he has barely touched. Because from the booth at the back of the diner, he can hear a conversation that has been going on for 3 minutes and is not going well.
I don't know how much longer.
A girl in a waitress uniform is speaking quietly. A man in a short-sleeved shirt behind the swinging kitchen door is speaking less quietly. The girl's voice is steady, but her hands on the counter are not. Nobody in the diner recognizes the man at the counter yet. Here is the story. Ellen Marsh is 19 years old. She has been working this counter for 14 months, every morning shift except 3, all 3 of which she called in before 6, and all 3 of which involved the fever that went through Flagstaff in the winter of 1957. She has never been late. She has never left a shift early. She carries a small spiral notebook in her apron pocket and writes every order down, not because she has to, she has a good memory, but because she decided on her first day that she was not going to give anyone a reason to complain about her work. Her parents died in a traffic accident on Highway 89 in the summer of 1955. She was 16. She went to live with her Uncle Roy in Flagstaff, a quiet man who worked the railroad and who gave her a room and meals and not much else because he did not have much else to give. She does not blame him for this. He did what he could. She was accepted to the nursing program at Northern Arizona University in the spring of 1958. The tuition is $180 per semester. She has been saving from the diner since she got the acceptance letter, setting aside $20 every week in an envelope in the kitchen drawer. She has enough for the first semester and half of the second. She needs the job. She needs every shift. The conversation at the back of the diner is between Ellen and Ray Cobb, who has owned this place for 10 years and who is not a bad man, but who is, at this moment, a frightened one. The county health inspector left a notice 2 days ago. The kitchen has violations. Grease buildup behind the range, a backlog of dishes in the dry storage, a floor drain that has not been properly cleaned. The inspector is coming back tonight at 8 o'clock. If the violations are not corrected, the operating license is suspended. Ray does not have money to hire extra staff. He has been looking for a reason to cut his payroll for 3 weeks, and the reason arrived this morning in the form of a customer complaint. A table that waited 20 minutes for coffee, a cup that came with a chip in the rim. The complaint is written on a card Ray is holding. I've had 1 complaint in 14 months, Ellen is saying. 1. And I don't know that table waited 20 minutes. I was covering the whole floor alone because Carl called in sick. Ray looks at the card. Policy is policy, he says. 3 complaints and we talk about it. This is your 3rd. Ellen is quiet for a moment. That is not true, and both of them know it. There were 2 previous complaints in 14 months, both minor, both addressed. Ray has the card and he is using it. He is not looking at her when he says it. He is looking at the wall to the left of her head, the way people look when they are saying something they cannot quite meet the other person's eyes to say. Ellen has worked for Ray for 14 months, and she has never seen him look at that wall before, and she understands exactly what that means. Please. Her voice does not break, but it comes close to something near it. I'm in school. I don't have another income. I need this job through May. Please press the hype button on your phone to support my videos and me. Ray looks at the wall behind Ellen instead of at her face. I'm sorry, he says. And he is. That much is true. But I've got an inspector coming tonight at 8, and a kitchen that'll get me shut down if I can't get it cleaned up, and I don't have the staff or the money to deal with both things right now. The man at the counter sets his fork down. He gets up from the stool. He walks to the back of the diner. He stops beside Ellen. He looks at Ray. Don't fire her. Ray looks at him. Sir, this is a staff matter. She's been here 14 months without a problem. The man looks at the complaint card in Ray's hand. Whatever that says, it doesn't add up to 14 months of showing up. Ray looks at him. He has not placed the face yet. Mister, I hear you, but I've got a real problem tonight. That kitchen needs 4 hours of work minimum, and I've got 1 guy and no budget to fix it. I can't keep staff I can't afford to keep. The man reaches into his jacket. His hand finds nothing. He checks the other side. He stands very still for a moment. Then he says, "My wallet's in the car." He says it the way a man says something he cannot quite believe is true. "My friend borrowed my car this morning. Honeymoon trip. He won't be back for 2 hours." Ray looks at him. Ellen looks at him. The man looks at the kitchen door, then at Ray. "How bad is it in there?" Ray blinks. "Bad enough. How many hours to fix it?" 4. Maybe 3.5 if I push." The man takes off his jacket and hangs it on the hook by the kitchen door. He rolls his sleeves to the elbow. "Then we'd better start now," he says. Ray stares at him. "Sir, you don't have to." "I know I don't." The man pushes through the kitchen door. "Where are you watching from? Drop your state in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches." Ray stands in the doorway of his own kitchen for a long moment, looking at a man in a tan Stetson who is reading the health inspector's violation notice that has been taped to the wall above the sink. The man pulls the notice off the wall and reads it carefully, and then looks at the kitchen the way a man looks at a problem he is deciding how to approach. "Well," he says, "let's take it from the top." Ellen is still standing in the back of the diner. She looks at Ray. Ray looks at her. He has the expression of a man whose situation has just changed in a way he did not expect and has not yet caught up to. "You know how to clean a floor drain," he says. Ellen goes into the kitchen. The three of them work from 2:15 in the afternoon until 7:55 in the evening. Ray on the range and the grease traps. Ellen on the floor drain and the baseboards. The man in the Stetson on the dishes, the backed-up stock from dry storage, 3 full racks of plates and glassware and pots that have been sitting since Tuesday, scrubbed and rinsed and set to dry in order. He works without talking much. He does not know the kitchen, and he does not pretend to. He asks where things go, and Ellen tells him, and he puts them where she says. He scrubs the pots the way a man scrubs pots when he means to get them clean rather than clean enough. The full surface, the undersides, the handles where grease collects that nobody remembers to check. Ray notices this at about the 3 o'clock mark, and does not say anything about it, but adjusts his own pace accordingly. At 4:30, Ellen brings 3 cups of coffee from the counter. They drink them standing in the kitchen. Nobody talks for a minute. Then the man sets his cup in the rack and picks up the brush and goes back to work. Ray looks at Ellen. Ellen looks at her coffee. They go back to work. At 6 o'clock, a family comes in the front door looking for supper. Ray goes out to the counter. Ellen stays in the kitchen. The man stays in the kitchen. For 40 minutes, it is just the two of them, the sound of the diner on the other side of the swinging door and the sound of work on this side. Ellen at the baseboards. The man finishing the last rack of glasses. He sets the final glass on the drying rack and looks at the row of clean glasses and then at Ellen on the floor. "You do this every morning," he says. Ellen looks up. "Before my shift." "Yes." He looks at the glasses. "What time does your shift start?" 5:30. He looks at her for a moment. Then he picks up the mop. At 7:30, there are still 2 racks of pots left. Ray comes back from the counter and looks at the clock and says nothing. Ellen looks at the pots and says nothing. The man looks at both of them and picks up the scrubbing brush. At 7:54, the last pot goes on the rack. Not gently. It goes on the rack the way things go when there is no time left for gentle. Ellen's arms are shaking slightly from the baseboards. Ray is breathing hard from the range. The man sets the pot down and steps back and looks at the kitchen. The drain is clear. The range is clean. The racks are full and ordered. The floor is dry. He picks up the dish towel from his shoulder and folds it over the rack, and that is that. The inspector arrives at 8:02. He goes through the violation list point by point. He takes 20 minutes. He signs the clearance at 8:22. The operating license is not suspended. When the inspector's car pulls out of the lot, Ray sits down on a crate in the kitchen. He is 61 years old, and he has not worked that hard in 3 years. He looks at the man across the kitchen, who has his sleeves still rolled and a dish towel over his shoulder, and who is leaning against the sink drinking a glass of water. Ray says, "I don't know how to thank you." The man looks at him. "Yes, you do," he says. He looks at Ellen. "She's here tomorrow morning, same shift." Ray looks at Ellen. Ellen looks at Ray. Ray nods once. Ellen looks at the floor. Then she looks up. "Thank you," she says to the man. Her voice is steady again. "Both of you." The man puts the glass in the sink. He picks up his jacket from the hook by the door. He looks at Ellen. How far are you walking? Ellen names the street. 12 minutes, she says. It is 8:45 in the evening, and the Route 66 traffic has thinned out, and the October air has the cold edge that comes off the San Francisco peaks at night. The man walks with her. He does not make a production of it. He just walks beside her at the same pace he does everything, unhurried, hands in his jacket pockets. They pass the depot and turn north on Beaver Street. The sidewalk is quiet. A dog barks somewhere behind a fence and stops. Ellen asks if he is passing through. He says yes, back to a film set outside Williams. She says she thought she recognized him earlier, in the diner. He says most people think that about most people, and leaves it there. She asks, "Why did you stay?" "In the kitchen. You didn't have to." He is quiet for a half a block. Then he says, "I had nowhere to be for 2 hours and you had a problem that needed solving." He looks at the street ahead. It seemed like the right use of the time. She thinks about that. She has been thinking about a lot of things since 7:54 when the last pot went on the rack, and she leaned against the counter and felt something she could not name exactly. Something between relief and something larger than relief. She says, "I've been saving for a year and a half, for the nursing school. If I'd lost that job tonight, I don't know what I would have done." The man walks for a moment without answering. Then he says, "You would have figured something out." He says it not as comfort, but as a statement of fact, the way you say something you have observed to be true. You're the kind of person who figures something out. They reach the house on Beaver Street. A light is on in the front room. Her Uncle Roy, home from the railroad. Ellen stops at the gate. She turns to the man. She has been trying to find the right thing to say since they left the diner, and she has not found it. So she just says, "Thank you." Both words. Separately. The way you say something when you mean it entirely and have no other way to show it. He touches the brim of his Stetson. He turns and walks back toward Route 66. Ellen watches him go until the October dark takes him. Then she goes inside and sits at the kitchen table for a while before she can make herself move. 2 days later, an envelope arrives at the house on Beaver Street, addressed to Ellen Marsh, in handwriting she does not immediately recognize. Inside the envelope is $400 in cash and a single index card. On the card, "For the nursing school, don't thank me, finish." No signature. Ellen sits at the kitchen table with the card in both hands. She looks at the handwriting for a long time. She has seen Ray's handwriting on the order pad beside the register every shift for 14 months, and this is not Ray's handwriting. She thinks about who else has been in that kitchen. She thinks about a man in a tan Stetson writing something on Ray's notepad before Tom came back with the car. She thinks about what he said on Beaver Street. "You're the kind of person who figures something out." She puts the card back in the envelope with the money. She puts the envelope in the kitchen drawer with her savings. She sits at the table a while longer. Her Uncle Roy comes in from the railroad at 6 and finds her still sitting there. He asks if everything is all right. She says yes. She says everything is very all right. She does not tell him why. The $400 covered her second semester and the textbooks for both. She did not need to ask her uncle for anything. She graduated from the nursing program at Northern Arizona University in 1962. She worked at Flagstaff Medical Center for 31 years. She retired in 1993 as head of the surgical nursing floor. Ray Cobb kept Cobb's Diner open until 1971, when he retired and handed it to his son. Ellen worked every shift she was scheduled through May of 1959, when she left for her second year. She gave Ray 2 weeks' notice and a card she made herself. Ray kept the card behind the register until he retired. John Wayne drove back to the film set outside Williams that night. Tom had returned with the car and the wallet at 9 o'clock, finding Wayne gone and a note on the counter. Back later, had some dishes to do. Wayne did not explain further. He did not speak of the diner on Route 66 to any reporter or writer whose name appeared in print. In the house on Beaver Street, in the drawer where Ellen kept her savings envelope, the index card stayed for 40 years. When Ellen retired in 1993, she cleared the drawer and found it at the back, behind everything else. The handwriting was still clear. "For the nursing school, don't thank me, finish." She had finished. She put the card in the breast pocket of her nursing uniform, the last one she wore, the one she kept after she retired. The card is in that pocket now. The uniform hangs in the closet of her house in Flagstaff. She does not take the card out much anymore. She knows what it says. Every October, she drives down Route 66 and parks in front of the building that used to be Cobb's Diner. It is a different business now, but the sign bracket above the door is the same bracket, and the counter through the window is the same counter, and the hook by the kitchen door where a man hung his jacket on an October afternoon in 1958 is still on the wall. She sits in her car for a few minutes, then she drives home. If this story reached you, do me a favor, pass it on. Share it with someone who showed up every day and never asked for anything. There are more stories coming.